get back, as it'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night. Mostly.
Welcome to Mostly Horror Movie Night.
Mostly.
Nice. I'm Steve.
Yeah, I do what I can, and I'm Sean. And I just wanted to show you what was going on in here.
Oh,
yeah.
How many donuts do you have left?
We got 3.5.
Okay, you bought half a dozen, right? Not a dozen.
Yeah, and I've been slamming today. This is all I've eaten.
I miss Donut Town so much I could cry.
It's the American dream, Steve.
If you are in Southeast Michigan, Donut Town is on Beach Daily and something. It's on
and they're
Beach
not
Daily.
even paying us. I paid for these donuts.
Dude, I'm not even there anymore. Go be a patron. Give them your money. Donut Town is like the best donuts. They slap them so much. So we're gonna make this intro really short. We don't want to talk too long because we have an absolutely wonderful and so enjoyable conversation with Gory Cory, who is a teen horror fanatic filmmaker, works with Fangoria, has an amazing blog. I would say horror influencer, as much as I don't love the term influencer. I think that she's definitely in that realm. But yeah, so our conversation is so great. Our top 5 is so great. We definitely got to do more stuff with her in the
absolutely. I'm eating this donut, so I apologize. ASMR or whatever the fuck it's called.
I was gonna say I had rice cakes in the last episode.
Yeah, you did. But what was I at? Cory is someone that everyone needs to keep an eye out for, because clearly she's going to be doing all sorts of stuff. If you're a horror fan, not specifically just of horror movies, but if you love the community and the genre as a whole, the movement, if you will, you gotta definitely pay attention to Cory, because great things are coming for sure.
So we're not going to dilly-dally for too long before we get to that conversation and the top 5 that we do. First thing, just some basic housekeeping stuff. If you guys haven't, I know I've said this a million times, follow us on Twitter at Mostly Horror. Instagram is where we post probably the most and have a great interaction. And that's at Mostly Horror Movie Night. We have a YouTube, so if you're listening to this on one of the streaming services and you want to look at our ugly mugs while we talk and interview people, we have a YouTube, Mostly Horror Movie Night.
It really boosts the horror to watch us while we speak.
Exactly. No. And we reference some things sometimes, so it's fun to have that little added, stuff. But also, we're talking about releasing possibly some shirts. We're talking about possibly doing some stuff where we, have our listeners be a part of different things. And speaking of that, we haven't done a horror story in quite some time. But we want to remind people that we still want to read your horror story, your origin, your beginnings with the genre, a time that you saw a movie and it freaked you out so much that you blah, 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 blah. Email us at mostlyhorrormovienight@gmail.com.
To fit the theme of this episode, I think even if it's not a horror movie, even if it's just a movie that had a really scary part that scarred you for life, I want to know about it. Truly, I want to know. So write us. Exactly.
So send us an email. I promise we'll read it. And the last thing, honestly, before we go for this little segment is, if you haven't, we had a portion of time a couple of weeks ago where we were notified that we were number 18 in Canada for film interviews on Apple Podcasts and 45 in the US, which is crazy. This is our 14th episode or something. Yeah. But if you haven't and you're listening right now, hop onto Apple Podcasts really quick. Leave us a 5-star review if you like it, if you like us, if you enjoy us. If you hate us, leave us a 5-star review.
Just do it.
If you want to leave us a review, sure. Go ahead. Yeah. It's totally fine. But we appreciate it immensely. We truly can't say enough. Sean and I have talked about how we recently, we only started this at the end of February, and we've had some amazing guests. We've had so much great response so far. And it's only going to get bigger and better. So thank you guys always for listening.
I'm having a blast.
Yeah, exactly.
I just appreciate the hell out of you guys. And
so thank you guys always for listening. Like I said, we're going to hop over to our interview with Gory Cory. Hope you guys enjoy. All right, we are here with Cory McCollugh, aka Gory Cory. Cory is an 18-year-old filmmaker and horror fanatic. She is a Fangoria correspondent and has written for Shudder's The Bite and Fangoria's Terror Teletype. God, that was difficult to say. She also runs her blog, gorycory.net, where she writes articles about the horror genre. Cory, thank you for being on the pod today. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. I feel like it's been a long time coming. We're obviously pretty new of a podcast, but we knew, we want to talk to up and coming people in the horror genre, people that love the genre. And you are like undeniably someone who loves the genre. You can tell anyone that follows you. The first thing that I'm kind of wondering, or that I am wondering, is how did you get your start in the horror genre? Like, what's your first experience with the horror genre?
Well, I was always really fascinated by horror growing up. Like, my mom used to go all out when decorating for Halloween, and she would take me to like Halloween decorating conventions and stuff like that. And she she made sure that I watched like the Munsters, Addams Family, and Scooby-Doo and all that kind of stuff from a young age. And when I was in elementary school, it was like my dream to be a cryptozoologist. So I was really obsessed with cryptids. I would like check out every book we had in the library. And it just sort of evolved from there.
Oh, yeah. Spooky kid from birth.
Yeah.
That's amazing. All right. This isn't a question we have written down, but favorite cryptid, if you have to choose one.
I would say the Megalodon, which technically, like, some people would argue isn't a cryptid because it was like a thing. But I believe that they're still in the ocean. I want to find one. How about you guys?
I'm really glad that you said that. Mine is Nessie, and I would say that you could say Megalodon just like you could say Loch Ness Monster. Yeah, Plesiosaur. I read your shark exploitation article, and you were talking about the Megalodon, and I'm like, it's down there, dude. And so are aliens.
It is. So. Yeah. If we've explored more of space in the ocean, then you can't tell me there's a giant shark hiding somewhere.
100%.
No, 100%. I think we all agree that there is a Megalodon in the ocean. So there's no concerns there. I don't know. I used to love Nessie a lot. Like, Nessie was my number one. I just watched. It's not technically a Bigfoot documentary, but it's a documentary on Hulu called Bigfoot, Sasquatch or Bigfoot or whatever.
So good.
Crazy, right? Good. Yeah. It's really good. Bobo from Finding Bigfoot was in it, and I freaked out because that was like my childhood, my favorite TV show when I was a kid.
I need to catch up.
It's really
it's
crazy. It's like good. It's only like 3 episodes, but it's that got me thinking, like, basically just the first episode got me thinking, like, damn, Bigfoot's totally real. Like, I totally believe it now.
Well, it makes total sense because I feel like if like pre-evolutionary type of like humanoid people, like, I feel like that's what Bigfoot would be. Yeah, it makes sense.
Well, he's just a man that's stuck in the woods somewhere.
Just some hairy guy. Yeah,
exactly.
No, I see. It's funny because over the past couple of years, I have gone full tinfoil hat, like aliens, and literally every cryptid, anything, I'm just like, yeah, but aliens are the reason. I'm like, Bigfoot's an alien, the Mothman's an alien, like everything.
We're all
I'm like,
aliens, actually, and we just didn't know.
You should have watched my spiral. I wish I could have documented it because I went from being like, aliens might be real to full crazy
no
person.
Doubt. Yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Well, I've been seeing I go on TikTok a lot, and like the popular thing on like Witch Talk is saying that like we're all aliens that came here to like help the human race or something.
Boom.
And we just all forgot. And I love that theory.
I need to get on that side of Witch Talk.
Yeah,
I was losing my mind.
I'm surprised Sean hasn't seen that on TikTok.
Yeah. My For You page is so crazy.
So cryptids aside, obviously you're raised with a lot of the classic Munsters, Addams Family, Scooby-Doo, 100% classics. What, before we go into kind of the nitty gritty of what you talk about and write about, what would you say are, maybe your top 5 favorite, just horror films, period?
Definitely Scream, like MTV series as well, but the movie franchise. Because that was sort of like my parents didn't show me any horror movies growing up, and I sort of like stumbled upon the MTV series, and that's what got me into all horror.
Gotcha.
And so that has like a really special place for me. And then Scooby-Doo is, I still think to this day, like one of the best franchises ever. I love it so much.
Yeah.
Jaws, The Shining, and Starry Eyes.
Okay, absolutely.
Nice.
I saw that's another one. Exploring your website, I saw that you had Starry Eyes in your recommendation.
Love Starry Eyes so much.
So because I haven't seen it, I
don't know what Starry Eyes is.
It's like a really obscure indie movie, and it's about this actress who basically has to like sell her soul to get a job, and it's just such a beautiful it's such a good representation of like Hollywood and sort of the race to fame, I guess. It's really nice.
It's funny because I've seen the thumbnail for it a bunch of places. Like I've seen that movie around and have never clicked on it. And then I saw your recommendation and was like, well, damn, I've been missing out this whole time.
I highly recommend it. It's a really good time.
Hell yeah.
That'll have to be on the list. So with Scream, so it was your gateway with the series. So you had to kind of reverse engineer that and go through like the actual film series after. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And I loved the film series so much. I was in middle school when it came out. So it was like, I was the perfect age to watch it. Mm-hmm. And basically like the point of the series is that they have like a ton of references to a lot of classic horror movies. So once I watched the series, I wanted to go back and look at everything that they were referencing. And I was just obsessed after that.
Gotcha.
Wild.
Yeah, that's so perfect. Scream is so meta and so referential that like that is the best gate. I mean, truly like the best gateway. There's so many people.
I think it really is.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense.
I love that the show, like hearing that a show like that was out or is out and, kind of introduced people to an entire genre is really cool. I only saw the first episode of it and it's not that I disliked it. I just never finished. And so now I'm sitting here like after this interview, I'm going to have a bunch of homework to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of the best kills, I think.
Really?
Like, in TV ever, including Hannibal. It has
really
kills. Yeah.
Wow.
That's a bold statement.
I know. Okay. It is a TV-14 TV show, so they couldn't have gone too far, but like they do some kills that I was very shocked by.
Really?
It's really good.
Okay. Hell yeah.
For you to list Hannibal and say comparative. Wow.
Because my love for Hannibal. Okay.
Hannibal's so good.
Yeah.
That's another thing is I really love horror TV shows and I wish we had more of them because I think they're such a perfect like bridge between movies, like suspense movies and TV shows. I feel like people are more willing to watch TV.
Yeah. Exactly. That's one thing I will try not to go on a rant or tangent here, but that's one thing within the past couple of years, obviously huge cinephile. I love films so much, but I've begun to love TV so much just because it's such a different format and you can tell a story completely. I mean, I won't say a lot because Sean hasn't seen it and I'm not sure if you have, but myself, my girlfriend, and our roommates are watching Castle Rock, and we're on the second season now. And again, another great horror TV show, but there's some single episodes that are like film worthy, like that could just be a film by themselves. And so it's such a great, I agree. It's a different way of storytelling that's outside of, just creating a film. And I wish that there were more.
I love that they don't have to be so condensed. I've been saying for a while that I would love to see, because we're in an age of remakes because we're in an age of nostalgia, which I don't personally have like a huge problem with. Like it's fine, but I would like to see remake American Psycho, but do it as like a 3-episode miniseries, or as a show or as a movie.
Showtime.
I put it out into the universe.
I manifested it.
I did. Yeah. I did. Get me on Witch Talk. Let's go.
No, Showtime's doing an American Psycho series, and they're doing a Saw series. I think it's something. I think it was Saw.
Interesting.
Yeah. There's a Chucky one coming out too.
Yes,
I heard. I just heard a roommate about that. Yeah. I'm really curious to see what direction they go.
I was such a TV kid. As a kid, because I didn't have very much access to movies. And so I would watch stuff like Doctor Who and Teen Wolf. And that was like the closest I could get to horror before watching like Scream. So I think it's a really perfect way to get like the next generation into horrors through TV. And also you get to stay with the characters longer. And it's so much nicer. Yeah.
You really get to build in an attachment and therefore devastation.
It's funny that you say that.
sorry, we're totally going off script at this point, but you said that your mom took you to
horror,
what was that?
No,
Halloween decorating.
Yeah,
specifically.
These are very specific.
Yeah, can you elaborate on what that like memories of that kind of convention really quick?
Yeah,
and then I'm gonna pick at your mom a bit because
they were really cool. It was basically just a huge convention hall, and then they would have all these different booths set up with different Halloween props and animatronics. But it was really cool because you got to see the stuff that like Spirit was going to have the next year and all this kind of stuff in advance. And within the Halloween decorating business, I guess they have different trends every year. So like they did clowns a couple years ago. They'll do like summer camp one year, all that kind of stuff. Nice. So they like predict that. And it was really cool. They had crazy animatronics. Like, it was insane.
I can't believe that I didn't know that these conventions existed. I'm very upset. They have them in New Jersey, I think is where we went to them. Well, we got to go to New Jersey, Philly area.
I'm in New York, Sean. Come over.
I am. I swear to you. As soon as I see what's going on with COVID stuff and conventions start back up, I'm 100% down. So, okay, but yeah. So you said your mom introduced you to a lot of spooky stuff then, but she wasn't like showing you horror movies right off the bat.
She's not a horror movie fan, which is like the weird part, but she is like she goes crazy when it comes to Halloween. I don't know what it is. She puts decorations up for movies that she hasn't seen too. So so she instilled that love for the spooky aesthetic and then it bled over. Yeah. And we also would go on like every time we go to like a new place, we'll go on like ghost tours and stuff like that. Like she loves any kind of like paranormal stuff, but doesn't love horror. Well, I just don't think that she's ever like seen it. She's not opposed to it. I've been slowly showing her more stuff. But. Got you.
Yeah, I see you tweet about like making your parents watch certain things, and you'll tweet about it, and then like 45 minutes will go by, and you'll say something else like about their reaction. It's great. Yeah, that's so good. So circling back, because again, we're all over the place at this point, but circling back to this is good. I like this. I prefer this. But so circling back to Scream, I love that was sort of like an intro for you as the show and stuff. And I saw in your blog, you were talking about both in your article. I have to look up the name of it. The one where we need to apologize to teen girls. And then you had one where you were specifically talking about The Craft. Yeah. And how you felt it was a good representation of, your generation. Do you have, I guess I don't really know what my question here is, but do you want to like expand on that a bit or have any other series that you feel are really good representations of your generation or like active shows now for people more around your age? Yes, I think it's definitely really difficult for a lot of filmmakers to like make teen content that's relatable, because if you look at stuff like Riverdale, like that is not what teen life is like at all. Right. Yeah. And then they're casting like 30-year-old actors, and it's just like very different. And they try their best to like use teen slang and it just doesn't work. And it feels very like 60-year-olds writing for like teenagers. Yeah. But I would say The Craft, I think, did probably the best job of any movie I've seen lately of perfectly capturing like teen friendships, and they did a really good job with like the way that teens speak as well. Scream, the TV series, did a pretty good job with it. I would say even like the Scream from the 90s, like the original Scream, was fairly close to like how teens act, at least. Yeah. Not necessarily how like modern day teens speak and that kind of stuff. And then I guess Euphoria would probably be, but that's not really horror. So it's really difficult to find. And I think that's an area that we're lacking a ton in. And I think if maybe they just use teens and ask teens, we would have much better representations in the media. Well, that's the thing is it's so funny because I was just listening to an episode of the Morbid podcast earlier where they were talking about It Follows. No, I was listening to their horror podcast, Scream. They were talking about It Follows, and they were talking about how they liked It Follows because it portrays college students as opposed to where normally horror films will take high school students but have 20 somethings play them or 30 somethings, and it just doesn't feel right. So I agree, like it's also tough because you have you have these people, you're not going to really get an 18, 19, 20-year-old writing about high school normally. I mean, at least in like a big major motion picture.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, there are plenty of teen screenwriters that are writing, and they could at least be like consultants.
Yeah.
I just don't think that anyone's really looking for that.
Yeah.
So I think
it's a shame.
I think if they were, it would make it a lot more realistic. And I think that they should do the same thing with everything. Like, I think kids shows that are on Nickelodeon talking about like kids should have kids in the room, should have kids consulting at least,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's why things that do it, sorry, Sean, that's why things that do that normally work out so well. So you have, you have a film like Interstellar that has, talking to Neil deGrasse Tyson, like obviously it's going to be a good movie about space. Like you have, totally not horror, but you have John Mulaney's The Sack Lunch Bunch.
Yes, the Sack Lunch. It was so good.
It's so good because it has children in it. It's talking to kids, but it's also a kid's show. So I totally agree.
Exactly.
I see exactly where you're going.
And I know, like, I just found this out like last year, but my favorite movie growing up was Shark Boy and Lava Girl. And that was written by like an 8-year-old, like Robert, like, well, it wasn't completely. It was based off of an idea from Robert Rodriguez's kid, who was 8 years old at the time, who like co-wrote it with him. And that's why that's why it's weird, but it feels so much like a child's mind. Like,
well, it clearly did something right because that movie has a cult following. There are people that will love that movie for the rest of their lives. I think more than ever right now, we probably need that sort of consultation, because especially for teens, because technology is changing the culture of teens faster now than it ever did before. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, being a 90s teen was kind of similar.
Being a 90s teen was like,
it was one thing.
I read a book by Christopher Pike that I think was from the 60s, and it was like, I couldn't even process that this was like a book for teens. Like,
but your ninth grade year is going to be so much drastically different than your 12th grade year, just by how technology and everything has adapted just in that amount of time. Mm-hmm. There's a new thing every day, it seems. So
So obviously you have so much thoughts on so many different topics, especially, I mean, not just in the horror genre, but you have been able to expand and talk about different things.
I have a lot of opinions.
Well, I mean, you have a lot of opinions, but so does everyone. But you know how to talk about them eloquently, as I can't even say the word. Of course. Well, so your avenue of doing that, you have, as I said before, you have your blog, gorycory.net. And can you kind of just talk a little bit about the beginning of that, like why you wanted to start it, how you started it, your kind of like what you want to do with it, more or less?
Well, the summer of 2019, so the summer before my junior year, I took a horror production class from Dr. Rebecca McKendry, and she stressed really, really hard. Like, you cannot wait for any opportunity. If you want to work, you just have to make stuff, and that way you can show it to people. So I figured I don't really know how to make a blog, but I figured, like, why not? I might as well just have something online published. I don't care if anyone reads it. Like, I'll just throw it up there, and that way I can like talk about horror and stop annoying all my family and friends because they do not want to hear about it. So I like just looked up like Squarespace, and they had pretty easy tutorials on there. And I owe most of its success to Phil Nobile Jr. from Fangoria, because he retweeted it. And that's pretty much the only way it got any eyes on it. Yeah. But
that's awesome. So you're obviously posting, recommendations, you're posting original articles that you're writing about thoughts or ideas of certain films that you have, which we definitely want to talk about. Is there a specific, is it just a release for you for where you're just putting your thoughts out there? Is there, are you trying to bring attention to certain things at all?
Yes. Yes to both. It's definitely a release for me. And like, one thing that I think a lot of writers, one thing that sucks a lot for writers is you have to pitch stuff to a lot of different outlets to get anything published. And I just did not want to have to go through that. I just wanted to be able to put my thoughts online. So it's definitely a place for me to like have a space where I can like publish whatever I want. And also just, I really like bringing awareness to horror. And I think horror so often like points out the flaws within our society. And so I really wanted to bring attention to that and just sort of write on it. But I also put a lot of other stuff on there. It's just sort of like me rambling, I guess.
Which is fun.
I try to find ways to connect it back to horror as much as I can.
Yeah. Well, I think you kill it. I'm going to say when I found out, you know, because I don't really read blogs. Like it's not an area that I've really explored a ton of. And I think I was like assuming that it would mainly be like movie reviews. And I was like, this could be pretty cool. And then I got in and you're not like, that's not what you're doing. You're doing, it's so like you have great thoughts, not just about specific movies, but about like the genre and no, truly. Yeah, absolutely. I was very, very impressed with your blog. I think it is great. I think you have a lot of great things to say, and it doesn't just feel like random. Like you can tell that you do a really good job of talking about serious things and then having fun with it as well. You know? Yeah, absolutely.
I'm so glad.
Do you really quick before Sean asks a question, do you get your ideas from like interactions that you have on Twitter at all? Do those kind of like spur?
Oh, totally.
You're like, I need to write. Okay.
Totally.
I was like, that's gotta be something, right?
I'm on Twitter 24/7. It never stops.
I follow you. I know.
Yeah, you're funny on there.
Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, so we were talking, I guess you kind of covered it, but I was going to say, I love that you know, it's not just horror. You have like so many different segments. I wrote some of them down, but you have like, you know, links that bring people into Black Lives Matter awareness stuff. You have, you know, you have this general mission statement to talk about real issues, which I think is really cool. You have a kids horror recommendations like segment on there.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, can you kind of break down or kind of talk about the different aspects of your site in general and why each part is there and what it means to you?
So to start off with the kids recommendations, that is a really good friend of mine, Judy Neeb. She is a librarian in California and she is like a kids book specialist and she is a total horror fanatic. Her knowledge of horror movies is insane. And she's so sweet and awesome. And she writes monthly book recommendations for kids that are horror themed. And it's really cool. So I absolutely love that. I was like, please put it on my blog. Oh my gosh. And I put Black Lives Matter resources on my blog during the Black Lives Matter movement, because in my mind, again, like horror and political or social justice issues go hand in hand, and horror forever. Like that's almost the mission of horror, is to spread awareness of that. So I want my blog to sort of follow in that and spread awareness of things that aren't necessarily related to horror, but I think that are really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's amazing. It's amazing to not just have a blog, but to be like, you know, there's a reason behind it. There's other, you know, more important things that you need to pull
right. Using your traffic sources to send them to other things that we need to be talking about. And
there's so much we need to be talking about.
Yeah,
like absolutely. I wish I could be doing more.
Yep.
I think you're doing a very good, you're at a very good start.
Yeah,
we could all be doing more. Yeah.
I try.
You're killing it.
So we do want to talk about some specific articles for people that haven't seen your blog. Obviously I've said it a couple of times now, but if you haven't been to Cory's blog, it's gorycory.net. There's no E's in either of those words. I've messed it up a couple of times, gorycory.net. But we do want to talk about a couple of your articles and have you kind of go over them. The first one, and Sean brought this to my attention specifically, and he can tell you why. But the elevated horror article, I think is very good, very eloquent. Sean, do you want to tell Cory a little bit of my business? Or
all I'm going to say is that Steve was a snob. He was a snob person, and he just wasn't. I feel like
you've mentioned this on a couple past episodes.
Yeah. Well, then you already know.
Yeah, you already know. I gotta explain it.
Yeah, but yeah, I was just he's definitely as especially as we're exploring more, you know, as friends, but as for the podcast and stuff too.
Yeah.
You've lightened up. But yeah, I just thought that was a great article. And in it, I wrote, I'm going to make the two of you argue in here. That was
All
just
right,
a joke,
let's do
it.
Well, so my thing was, and it's funny because he wrote that before I read it. So I read it and I definitely understand where you're coming from. I mean, it seems, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like your issue has more to do with the term than it really does like grouping those films together, right? Like you just don't like the term elevated. You don't at least want it to seem like these movies are quote unquote better than other horror movies, because they're not. I mean, I think you have a great line, and I took it out and it says Moonlight isn't a quote elevated romance because it's the same genre as The Room. Like, truthfully, I mean, it's an Oscar award winning film, but it doesn't mean you need to call it elevated romance. No one does that.
Exactly. And yeah. This is like a big rant that I will go on every time someone mentions it. And I apologize, but
go.
To me, like, because horror is so looked down upon, and because people constantly just hate on horror for like no reason, putting all these things into the elevated category when, first of all, like, that genre makes no sense, because it's not like these movies are necessarily similar. There are some that are similar, but half the time they're putting The Exorcist and Alien and Jaws into that mix. And so like that doesn't really go along with like the Hereditaries and Babadooks and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But just saying that one subgenre of an entire genre are the only like intelligent films within an entire genre, to me, is like incredibly disrespectful. And I think it closes a lot of people off to a lot of other horror movies that they wouldn't necessarily have seen before, especially in the independent landscape, because a lot of independent films don't necessarily get that title.
Yeah, no, yeah. I totally agree. Well, I mean, I think the consensus, and Sean and I were talking about this before we got on, but it's more, and we've called it this before, but like art house horror, like those films typically have a slow burn. Like they're typically very slow burn. I mean, I'm thinking of Saint Maud, which just came out very recently.
So good.
So good. I literally,
one of my all-time favorites.
Can I turn my screen to show you the poster? It's so funny because I was like, I normally switch out this poster that I have right here, and I was like, do I want to put Saint Maud there today? But so Saint Maud's obviously a good one. It's a very slow burn. It focuses a lot on visuals. It focuses a lot on, like they tend to be a lot of like normal character development and that sort of stuff, as opposed to something supernatural or haunting related or whatever. But I mean, to your point, you do have some indie films now that are taking that route. Like our first interview ever for the show was with Jordan Graham, who did Seder, which is coming to Shudder pretty soon. But that's I would say what some people would call art house horror, because it's an extreme slow burn. It's absolutely gorgeous, and it kind of fits in with those other ones. But I agree. I think it just doesn't need to be labeled that. You know what I mean? And also like films like Mandy that fit sort of all of the elevated horror, quote unquote, like subgenre categories don't get tagged as elevated anyways. So I just don't know why that term is being used rather than like art house or anything like that. It's strange. I would like to see who first. I know that AV Clubs, like their film podcast that they do sometimes, they talked about elevated horror before, and I need to revisit that and see if they talk about the origin, because I would be curious to kind of see where that came from, because that's a good point. We just need to stop using the term elevated. And like a lot of my friends and family, like one thing my dad always says whenever I show him a horror movie, he goes, oh, it's good for a horror movie. And I feel like I hear that constantly, and it really bugs me. And I think that's the same kind of mentality, is like, oh, well, it's a horror movie, but it's A24, so it's actually good. Thing. Like, and that's the thing that's so tough, because I'm like, damn it, I love A24.
No, A24 is amazing. They make incredible horror movies.
I have the shorts on right now. Like, I'll rep them. But
I have the Witch Screenplay book. I love A24.
Oh, dude, I gotta go grab mine really quick.
It's just
Hereditary pin right there.
Yeah, there you go. I don't have I have goosebump pins. For some reason, I thought I had a hereditary one, but it's don't even get me started. don't even get me started. But yeah, no, it's just funny because it seems like, in summary, they're applying it to like how serious the filmmakers were when they were making it in terms of the tone they were trying to set, where a lot of horror is kind of, more slashy or just about having some fun, but people don't dismiss other genres. They don't do it with action. They don't do it with comedies. They don't. So yeah. So, okay. Subject jump. I'm curious. So was that one tweet from Phil? Is that how you got connected with Fangoria? Do you want to talk about like your relationship with Fangoria, how that started? Take us on that journey, and then go into the Chainsaw Awards because I'm curious.
Yeah, of course.
So, in 2019, so 2 years ago, Phil tweeted out, if you buy like a box of Girl Scout cookies from one of the Fangoria members' kids, we'll retweet you on the Fangoria page. So I, of course, bought Girl Scout cookies because
win-win.
Yeah.
Well, also, just a side note, Girl Scouts is an incredible company and they donate a ton of money to help like queer youth, which is really cool. But
that's amazing.
Yeah, I just
learned that. The Boy Scouts really cool. Who normally fucking suck.
Yeah,
they're just the Scouts now, actually, so they got a little bit better. But
that's good.
Anywho, and then I just started like tweeting at Fangoria and Phil like a bunch to a point where I really, really annoyed them, I guess. And they finally were like, fine, we'll let her actually work with us. And I was sort of on their radar. And then when Freaky came out, they asked me if I would write a review from like a teen perspective. And I said like, absolutely. And the Fangoria team, all of them are so incredibly nice and amazing. Like they gave me so much advice and so much guidance. Tara, who owns it, like zoomed me and just like told me all this amazing stuff and gave me so much advice on working in the genre and in the industry. And they're really, really cool. So they asked me to review Freaky and to do a panel on it. And that was like sort of the first thing that I did with them. And then from there, I just became their teen correspondent.
That's awesome.
That's so cool. Before we get into the Chainsaw Awards, is it something that you did in terms of the panel, like with people from the film Freaky, or what did that kind of
that was like a panel interview with a couple of the actors in the movie. It was so cool. Like I was literally like Googling how do I host a panel because I had no idea what I was doing, but it was so cool. And I'm so grateful to Fangoria for everything they've done. I mean, they're like the reason that I'm where I am today. They're just really an incredible company.
We love Fangoria.
Of course,
but don't you are 100% the reason that you're here today. You took so much. Yeah. You're doing stuff that other, people aren't doing in general, nonetheless, people your age, like that's awesome. And yeah, that's super cool. Where do you want to go with it? Cause I know like there's filmmaker, you are into acting. You acted a lot in high school, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're a writer. Like do you have any idea? What do you want to do with your life, dude? Like, I need to know.
I'm so glad you asked because no one ever asks me this, but I really, really, my dream has always been to be a director and a screenwriter, but I prefer directing. I'm going to school next year for film at Emerson College. And
nice. Congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just want to make horror movies.
Hell yeah. Simple, to the point. Love it. Yeah.
I want to be a little bit of a underwater cinematographer, but that's really just an excuse to go see sharks.
Yeah. Can we listen? All right.
Can we talk about sharks?
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to start. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Jaws ruined my life. Jaws ruined my life, just like you say in your article, but we took two different whatever. Now, I want to stress before I even go into this, I don't want people killing sharks. I think that what's happening is terrible. I'm nowhere near as educated on it as you are, but I know a little bit, and I think that's terrible. However, never in my life do I want to go see sharks. Like
that's very valid.
Yeah, I was about to say, you can sit there and tell me the statistics and the logic aside. It doesn't matter. I will always think of Jaws, and I would never get in a cage. I support you on your mission. But okay, go ahead and talk about your love for sharks. Because I can't handle it. Jesus.
I think sharks are the coolest animals ever, and I love them so much, and I just think that they're incredible. I completely understand where you're coming from, and I was definitely that way when I first saw Jaws. I was like, I want to say I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, and I was so scared, and I freaked out about it, especially because I lived in Connecticut at the time, and we were like on the ocean, and I just couldn't deal with that. But then I sort of went crazy researching because I was like, well, why do they kill people? Why do they attack people? And then I found out that number one, you're more likely to be killed by a cow. You're more likely to be struck by lightning, and you're more likely to be killed by red ants or a refrigerator than you are a shark.
Wow.
So I was like, okay.
You heard it here first, guys. That's crazy.
The facts, guys. And the more and more I learned about them, the more I thought they were very similar to cryptids, because we know like barely anything about them, because literally no one wants to research them because of things like Jaws, which have made sharks kind of into like villains, which is understandable. But when you start researching them, you start to learn that they're like really incredible animals. First of all, they're one of the most important, probably the most important animals in the ocean. Like if without them, we would all be dead. They keep the ecosystem so healthy and so clean, and they're so important to us. And they're one of the biggest animals fighting against climate change, I guess. And like if you just left them alone and let them like do their job, then the world would be 10 times better. But unfortunately, and then as I was researching them, I found out how many get killed every year. 100 million sharks get killed by people every year. 100 million. That is an unfathomable number.
Yeah. That's insane.
And basically what happens for the most part is they're killed either for their livers, which is there's this thing called squalene, which is used in a lot of cosmetics, sunscreen, shampoos, that kind of thing, or for shark fin soup, where they're literally all of their fins are cut off and then they're thrown back into the ocean so that they can drown to death. It is so cruel, so inhumane, and it's awful. So I started following a lot of like shark conservationists, and sharks are literally so incredible. They're a lot like big cats, big underwater cats. You can pet them. No, they are. They are. Okay, wait. There's this diver that she goes and she dives with them, and she will remove because a lot of them get fish hooks stuck in their mouth. She reaches into their mouths and pulls the fish hooks out. She does this all the time. Crazy. She's never gotten attacked. I watched a video yesterday of a man who was swimming, he was going spearfishing, and then there was like this big whale carcass that this great white shark, this gigantic great white, was eating. And he just literally pulled on the shark's dorsal fin and like swam with it. And the shark literally could care less. Like sharks do not attack people. It's so rare. And also they just released drone footage, and we have all most likely swam with sharks at one point and just didn't know it because we couldn't see them.
Well,
so
thank you for me never going in the ocean ever again.
It's so crazy. You just said that you lived in Connecticut. I mean, I'm in New York City.
I was literally an hour from New York City when I lived in Connecticut.
Dude, so that's the thing. It's so funny because I was literally just thinking about this the other day because we were talking about how excited we are to go to beaches again soon, and I was at Rockaway Beach, and I'd get into the water and I would be like, yeah, this is nice. But then I'm like, there are sharks here. And I just can sense that there are sharks. I can feel it in my bones. And so eventually we get back to our apartment. Next day, there's a report on like Citizen or whatever. And it says 3 great white sharks were spotted, closer to the New York City shore than they ever have been in a couple of years. And I'm like,
of course, right as I move away, that's when the sharks are there. I'm so mad about it.
You're taking the opposite view.
I have wanted to swim with great white sharks for my entire life. It is my goal. I just want to see them
in like a controlled, I guess, because you're not worried about it, but she's not worried about it.
Well, here's the thing. I feel like if that's how I go, that is the best way to go.
It's fair.
I don't think you understand. Okay, wait. If you saw Nessie and Nessie had the chance to kill you, but you could still see Nessie, would you take it? Because like that's a good way to go.
Touche. Touche. I'll say, I mean, I think there's a bit of a mysticism.
Well, there is with sharks. We don't know anything about them.
You're right. It's 100%. I want to stress I am recognizing that all of my that are true fears. I'm not just saying this for the sake of the show. They freak me out. But it's all from ignorance. It's all from ignorance, and it's all from what I, have been fed from media, and stuff like that. So it's just hard for me to imagine getting over that.
Something that's really great is they have a lot of technology now where they have shark-proof suits that you can wear where they literally can't bite through. They're made of chainmail and they can't bite through them. They have shark repellent. They have suits that just make it look like you're not. Yeah, literally, it's like a spray. They have so many different things now that you're totally fine. And I'll say, if anyone's curious, there's a conservationist named Ocean Ramsey that swims with great whites every day, and she does really cool work. She has an educational program that's really interesting.
What was the name again?
Ocean Ramsey.
Ocean Ramsey. I will check that out because now I feel I gotta educate myself here.
I was gonna say, I did not expect to talk about sharks today. I'm very happy that we have talked about sharks
I'm
today.
so glad.
So
all I do is talk about sharks. It's my only interest.
That's wonderful.
That's amazing.
Let's start a shark podcast.
Hey, podcast. Listen,
Sharkcast, bro.
I don't have the time, but I would love to. One other thing that we want to talk about before we get into our game segment, which we're excited for, is the Chainsaw Awards. So we obviously talk about Fangoria.
Not really off topic there.
Listen,
perfect.
You got sharks, you got Chainsaw Awards. It's fine.
Yeah.
So can you just kind of talk a little bit about the experience? It's obviously for people that don't know, Fangoria hosts really the largest horror awards show, or maybe really the only horror awards show. It's not small potatoes. There's big people from the horror genre that are a part of it and that are in it, because Fangoria is pretty large.
Yeah.
But just kind of talk about the experience and also how you were able to do that.
It was literally the coolest thing I've ever done. I still can't believe that I did it. But Phil literally just emailed me one day and was like, "Hey, do you want to present for the awards? It would be we could really use you presenting." And I was like, yes. And then months after, they announced Jamie Lee Curtis was going to be there and all this stuff. And I flipped out. That is, I still can't, I'm still in shock over that. But, and I got to present the TV award, which as I said, I am a total TV kid. Yeah. I am so obsessed with TV. What We Do in the Shadows is such an insane show. It's one of my all-time favorites. So getting to present that award to them was really, really cool. I don't know if I don't know if Taika Waititi watched it or anything, but that would be really cool. They did.
Yeah. And Doug Jones accepted it, right? So it's
that was so cool.
That's I could tell. I was watching it. And as soon as you got on, I was like, you are so stoked to be there. You could just see it in your face. You were just so stoked. And it's cool because obviously it's unfortunate that we have a pandemic and that it had to be Zoom wise, but you're in for the future, when we can actually do it in person and stuff. Oh my God, so that's awesome.
So.
Yeah.
It was literally the coolest experience. And give a big shout out to Xanthi, who directed it. She is the coolest, such an incredible director. And she did so much work, amazing work on that.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Listen, the two things that I've gathered from this is I already reached out to him, but we need to get Phil on the podcast. We need to talk to Phil because, of course, we do. And Xanthi too.
He's so nice.
Yeah.
Yes. Xanthi is literally the coolest person. One of the coolest people I know. She's amazing. I did that horror production class I was talking about before. We were in together a bunch of years ago. So
nice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We'll make it happen. We make it happen.
Absolutely.
Work out. Awesome. Well, I think it's time for the game. Today, we have another top 5. We've talked about this a bit. So before we get into the game, we're going to be doing our top 5 films that aren't considered horror, but should be. And the reason that we're doing this is because, like I mentioned earlier with your Twitter, I think the reason was because someone, a film critic or someone called Aliens, or not Aliens, but Alien, not a horror film.
Because it's in space.
Because it's in space.
Yeah. Ridiculous.
And so there's, obviously a huge uproar in the horror community. And so
that caused so much drama.
That's crazy.
It was big. Well, so there's a lot of drama, but then also on the flip side of things, you have horror fans that are like kind of pearl clutching and also being kind of gatekeepy, and you don't want that either. Like you have, I think John Squires from Bloody Disgusting kind of said, the way that people have reacted to this woman is also not what we want to do. We want to explain why it is 100% a horror film, but we want to do it in a way that's good.
If it had just been a respectful conversation where we were like explained it and whether or not she agreed, like we would have at least been able to get our point across. But people really went off.
Yeah. Well, two things. One, horror fans have been, I think they're very, very, very protective of horror because it's dismissed so much, as we've talked about, which isn't okay. I'm not saying that makes it okay.
Yeah.
But then two, the internet. You can't expect cordialness on the internet.
On Twitter.
Welcome to Twitter. What do you want? But
that's literally the point of Twitter, is like to not be
exactly to take out. I had a terrible day at work. I'm gonna yell, scream, type at this lady for telling me that Alien's not a horror movie.
Yep. No, I totally agree. So
that's very accurate. But I think there is a lot of gatekeeping, like within the film industry all over, but especially horror, especially when it comes to any kind of marginalized voices. Especially women, like we are so gaslit and so gatekept from like everything horror, and it's just so annoying.
Yeah. Which, real quick, poking back to, please everyone go read your "We Owe Teenage Girls an Apology." I think you touch on that. I loved that article. I thought it was really cool.
Thank you.
The Invisible Man article too talks about gaslighting in particular.
Yeah, you touch both of those. I feel like touch that subject. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, games.
Yeah. So top 5 top 5 films that aren't considered horror, but that should be. And just to cap things off, you said that you should start calling yourself Judge Cory, and you're gonna take in horror films and be the judge of whether or not it's horror, but everything's gonna be horror. It doesn't matter.
I'm very sick of this discourse of everyone telling me what is and isn't horror. It's so subjective. And if there just needs to be one deciding voice, I guess I will take that role.
Yeah, you'll have to do it. On the graphic for this top 5, I'm gonna put Judge Cory as your name, just so you're aware.
Just Photoshop me onto like a photo of Judge Judy.
And now we have Mostly Horror has a new segment with you at the end of every time.
Perfect.
Wait, that'd be so fun.
Listen, we'll do it.
Write it down.
So as with all top 5s, we will start with Cory. We will all pick our teams or draft our top 5 films that aren't considered horror, but that should be. Obviously, if one person chooses a movie, no one else can pick that movie. I'm not going to go last this time because the last time I did was just an awful top 5 for me. So Sean's going to go last. I'll go second.
That's fine.
But as we pick, we'll kind of explain why it's a horror film to us, obviously, just so the listener can get a little bit. I'm not letting Sean go in front of me again. I don't know if you heard the Zombie Survival Squad one, but him and Chelsea screwed me over. So that's not happening again. But all right, Cory, go ahead with your number 1 pick of a film that's not considered horror, but that should be.
My number 1 pick, and this is purely from people telling me that it isn't horror. I think it is so obviously horror, and it bothers me to my core, is Jaws. I have this argument at least twice a day, like at least.
Yep.
It makes me so angry.
Yeah.
It is such a horror movie. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
So
it's literally a big monster movie.
It's a creature feature. It's just a more modern creature feature.
Yep. 100%.
That's all it is.
A kid gets eaten. Like it is a horrific movie. It is nothing but scares and bad things happening. Yeah. It's anyone that tries to argue that is a dum-dum.
It has 2 phenomenal, like 2 of the best jump scares, I think. One when Bruce comes
that
onto
head
the boat,
jump scare, I still have nightmares about.
I love a good earned jump scare, and man, Jaws knocks it out of the park with that for sure. Yeah. Hell yeah, that's a great first pick.
Yep.
Especially as we all know it's a horror film. That's not even reaching by any means.
What are their arguments?
I just think it's more of a thriller.
Get out.
It's suspense. It can be 2 things at once.
Yeah.
That's
you ever
allowed.
see a horror comedy?
Yeah.
You ever see a horror musical?
Exactly. Also, like, are almost all horror films not thrillers as well? Like,
yeah,
I
would say most of them.
Yeah, horror is like thriller meets drama meets
exactly
blood.
No, it's so tough for me because sometimes I watch a thriller and I'm like, that movie made me feel like garbage to the point where I would like Killing of a Sacred Deer is one of my favorite films ever made. I probably wouldn't call it horror, but if someone said it's a horror film, I'd say sure. Yeah, I would understand because it makes me feel sometimes. Yeah. Okay. Speaking of a movie that makes me feel like that, I know I'm going to take one of Sean's picks right here, but my number one movie that I would consider horror that probably isn't considered horror is going to be Requiem for a Dream. Because
you didn't take a pick.
I didn't. Yeah. Wow. No. If you've seen that film, you know that it is just an absolutely terrifying representation of drug use. It absolutely hits you to your core. And while it might not be scary in terms of, jump scares and that sort of stuff, there's very graphic things. I mean, just the subject matter in general is so deep and dark. I 100% would call it a horror film. Oh, absolutely. Dude, the arm alone is enough to mark that movie and burn that into your brain forever.
I'd also like to point out, like, horror doesn't necessarily have to be scary. And this is one thing that people get so mad at me for saying, but like Scooby-Doo is horror. It's not scary, but it's still horror. Yeah. And like, I would argue there's so many horror films, Scream, Halloween, The Exorcist, those aren't scary. Yeah. But they're scary to some people too. So it's all very subjective. I was about to say not just in the argument of whether or not something is horror, but a lot of times people will try to tell me that a horror movie wasn't good because it wasn't scary. And I'm like, what are you talking? Like, it doesn't have to be scary. I love when they are. I love when I'm creeped out hours after the movie. Like I'm chasing that high from when I was 10 years old, but that's not what my favorite horror movie is. Not scary at all. It's just fucked up. Yeah. Which is Dread. Have you seen Dread? Yes. Dread. Yeah. Thank you. That's another one that a lot of people argue isn't horror, by the way. I'll punch them right in the nose. Because it is so they're wrong. It's Clive Barker wrote it. You're wrong. And it's so good. Yeah. 100%. Oh my God. Let's go out into the streets, Corey, and just start. We'll have a purge. Yes. And just fix the problem at its source. Literally. All right, okay. So now that you're on that vibe, what's your number one? Well, so here's the thing. I changed the rules of the assignment maybe a little bit. Not really. Corey will defend me, I think. So I kind of picked a theme, and I'm going to say Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. That was on my list. Nice. Yes. Okay. So my thing is, and you're gonna see, I'm kind of focusing on movies that were made for kids, specifically in like the 80s and the 90s, mainly, that are incredibly dark and unsettling, but that no one sees as a horror movie or saw as inappropriate. I have one to add to that. It might be on your list already, but I wish I wouldn't have listed my theme. But yeah, I won't bring it up. No, you're good. You can do it. But so I think it's pretty self-explanatory, crazy guy owning a chocolate factory. There's been this argument has like one or two BuzzFeed things, So yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's scary. The imagery is scary for kids. That's what people have said. Also, can we talk? Like, the old version was so scary. The new version with Johnny Depp, I have literally never recovered from. That movie traumatized me to my core. Like, that movie is so scary for no reason. Yeah. Yeah, it's the Oompa Loompas alone. Johnny Depp, the way he looks in that movie, just all of it. So unsettling. Yep. You should really learn not to mumble. Yeah, plus I just love, like, that was a really exciting movie for me because I love when you take things that I grew up on that didn't have a dark tone to them, visually didn't have a dark tone, and you give it a dark visual look. Like, it just makes me happy. That's something I love. And I think we'll probably be seeing more of that in the future. Like films like Freaky and stuff that brought really bright colors to everything. I'm really interested to see like what kind of stuff like that we have next. Yeah. I'm very excited. Midsummer. Midsummer. Yeah. I mean, I love Neon Demon. Neon Demon was so good. That's another one a lot of people argue isn't horror.
It
absolutely is.
Have you seen the last 10 minutes of that film? What are you talking about? Oh my God. Oh my God. All right. Anyways,
literally.
So Willy Wonka, great pick. Corey, what's your second choice?
Jurassic Park.
Yes.
People again attack me for this because like it's sci-fi. Again, it can be two things at once.
Yes.
Jurassic Park was like the scariest thing I'd ever watched when I watched it. Like it was so scary. And also it has such a huge message about society and messing with nature. And that's really, again, like what the core of horror is talking about societal nature. So yeah.
Well, plus agree. I haven't read it, but isn't the book supposed to be like drastically more brutal too? Like there's this one specific raptor scene that I at least read like a passage of.
That's nice. I will bring that up in my next argument.
Yeah, do it. Yeah, man. It 100%. I think that just because it doesn't have you know, the hair on the back of your neck sticking up for the whole movie, people discount it. And it's just crazy.
The only thing that was scary about the most recent Jurassic World movie was how much I didn't like it. Sorry. I just I
thought you were going to say Chris Pratt.
Hey, I mean, if the shoe fits.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, Jurassic Park 100%. It's so
the original, the first one. I don't know.
The original.
First
no,
one,
I totally,
sure.
Yeah, totally agree. So it's so tough, man. I have so many. I'm going to go. All right. My next two are going to be my next. Yeah, I got some good ones. All right. My next one is scary because of how realistic it is. And mine is 0 Day. Have you guys ever heard of 0 Day?
No.
So,
yeah.
0 Day
dark.
It's fucking dark. 0 Day is a mockumentary that was made in probably 2003 or 4, early 2000s. But essentially, it's following two kids that are planning a school shooting.
Oh, Jesus.
And you don't think it's going to happen, and it does. And it's it's a comment on, it's very Bowling for Columbine, and it has that approach. And a lot of people don't like it because of that factor. But I do think that it's like an insight into the minds of these like twisted kids. And obviously it's not a real documentary or anything like that, but it's just a completely fucked up movie. One of those that you watch once and never want to watch again. Yeah. But it shakes. I mean, the fact that talking about it like gives me the heebie-jeebies.
I think it's a really good representation of how kids having fucked up conversations, or you know what I mean, and how quickly things can become real, I guess. I definitely recommend you give it a watch.
I don't know. I just can't do anything with school shootings at this point.
I get it.
Because I grew up, like we've had to deal with them since I was little, and it's always been on my mind ever since then. So it's just like even seeing it in American Horror Story and stuff, like it's couldn't.
Tough.
Yeah, I agree.
That's totally fair.
We probably have, God damn, we probably have 9 or 10 years between us, which is, I hate talking.
Now I feel
saying
old.
That phrase. I know it makes me feel old, but I think, as we were growing up in school, it became an issue because Columbine happened when we were pretty young, in probably elementary school. But then obviously as we got older, it became more prevalent. But you've been like, not to go on a tangent, but probably since you've been young, you've had drills and that sort of stuff, right?
It's just, it's always been like a reality to a point where like every room I walk into, I have to find every exit just because like that's just how we were raised.
Yeah, it's like Steve said, it was definitely something. I think we had like once a year we had a drill, but it never, not even once in my school experience did I actually consider it to be something that could happen. And then that very quickly changed as I was, leaving high school pretty much. And so it's a whole different reality. So it makes sense that it holds different weight.
I was going to say, I should specify again, this film came out early 2000s before it was like, I mean, so far ahead of that episode of American Horror Story. So definitely now it would not, no one would watch it at all.
Yeah. I think because I also grew up really close to Newtown. So it was just like, there was just so much of it. Close, and I knew so many. Yeah. So it's just,
That makes sense.
Do it.
Definitely understand not wanting to watch that one.
Yep, that's again, it's dark. So,
but that is a really important film, I think, to portray.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a big issue.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's probably something that needs to be explored more, but like, how do you do it? It's tough.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So,
Sean, what is your second choice? Pick something lighter than 0 Day.
Okay, let's say. All right, I'm
gonna
go.
Kids movies. We'll be fine.
Mainly. Yeah, I'm probably gonna pick all kids movies. So I'm going to pick Pinocchio.
Yeah. Wait.
Like
the new one though, because the new one was really scary.
No, I didn't. I haven't seen it yet, but I love. You're talking Del Toro, right?
That animation alone, is so scary. Yeah.
For the new one,
Del Toro's didn't come out yet, but you're talking about the one that just came out last year, right?
The one that I think it got an Oscar, and everyone was like, "Did this get released?"
Yeah, it got an Oscar for like hair and makeup or something because it was a live action.
And like no one even knew it was out.
Yeah, exactly. It was very like under the radar. I mean, obviously everything was last year for the most part, but Del Toro is making a stop motion animation Pinocchio for Netflix. Just to clarify that, Sean.
If anyone tries to tell me that isn't horror, by the way, that definitely is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought that they were the same thing.
No.
There were like a bunch of them that came out in the past couple of years. So it's impossible.
But you're talking about the OG, right, Sean?
Disney. I'm talking Disney. Yeah, Disney. And yeah, I just remember being a kid.
Wild.
It's scary.
Like, you rewatch it?
Yeah. When I was a kid, it scared me. There's a the guy that kidnaps Pinocchio and keeps him in a cage, that was terrifying and just like makes him perform. But then also when all of the boys turn into donkeys, terrifying. Like, it truly scared the hell out of me as a kid, but it was one of my favorite movies. It was weird. I think that was some of my earliest, I was always so afraid of those parts, but watched it all the time. But it never got easier.
Really, that movie, like, when I was a kid, I didn't really think about it, but like when I rewatched it, it's really insane. It's like if Oliver Twist and if all the kids in Oliver Twist were severely like mentally ill to a point where it was like all of them turned into donkeys. Like, what was that?
Early Disney was nuts.
Well, it's because early Disney is pulling from Grimm fairy tales and
but like they don't pull that much from that.
I mean,
a lot of it's really I'm realizing that it's only been within the past few decades that we've really dumbed down material for kids. We used to be pretty okay with scaring the shit out of kids, and I think we need to bring that back.
Yes, kids act up too much now.
Yeah, gotta spook them a little bit.
I agree.
But yeah, that's my pick.
One. All right, Corey.
My next one is also for kids. It's Harry Potter.
Oh.
And
which one?
I think all of them.
All of them?
Specifically, I think Prisoner of Azkaban, probably specifically, and Chamber of Secrets. Anything that deals with a man splitting his soul into multiple parts, that deals with basilisks, that deals with werewolves, vampires, anything like that, I consider horror, just with the supernatural element. But I also think like that is a genuinely really, like, I remember watching the first one as a kid and being so terrified of the 3-headed dog. Like, that was really scary. And so was Voldemort.
Yeah.
Quirrell's, the back of Quirrell's head. 100%.
Yeah. There's
scary. Yeah.
There's I remember being in the theater to watch Sorcerer's Stone for the first time. And when they open that book and the face comes out, like my brother, like I jumped and my brother started crying and wanted us to leave. And I was like, we're watching this movie. Do not make them make us leave.
Yeah.
That
is really scary for kids. And I think the book, when I read it as a kid, like that really very scary.
And I think Harry Potter does a really good job of it because it's mainly fantasy, but it's like it's never afraid to go horror.
Yeah.
Like it'll be full fantasy for one scene and have a lot of fun, like adventure fantasy, and then go straight into the depths.
All the people being petrified, that's like a slash. I mean, it's essentially a slasher happening in the hall.
Like a creature flick meets a slasher. Yeah.
Also, what do you think about how Voldemort is like supposed to basically be like Nazis? Like, it's supposed to be a metaphor for like genocide.
Yeah.
And like once you read it with that context, it gets so scary too.
Yeah.
Like, it's just it's really scary.
Yeah, it touches on a lot of things.
Yeah.
Totally a fair pick.
Yep.
Okay.
I was gonna pick a movie that had to deal with Nazis, but now I don't want to. I also don't really think it fits. But so I actually have 2 documentaries I'm gonna choose back to back next. So my next one is a documentary. It's sad and it's dark and it should be a horror film.
Love that.
And I'm gonna go with Blackfish because
yes, I agree.
It is literally just about the horrors that happen at small, water parks like SeaWorld and that sort of stuff. It's just like soul shaking.
Really?
So I would call it a horror film.
Most horror films I've ever seen, like that.
Yeah, 100 million %. And so is the one I'm going to pick after this. But Blackfish it tears you up to the point where I think a good thing or a thing about good horror films is they change something within you.
Mm-hmm.
Hereditary specifically did it for me. We've talked about it ad nauseum now, but that's Blackfish 100% change. Like I will never go to SeaWorld, and it's because of that film. And so, yeah, that's my choice.
Am I gonna cry? I'll watch it, but
it's possible. Sean doesn't like movies that make him cry.
I can't handle it. I really am a
crying is good for you. It's good for your skin.
I know, but here's the thing. Because for a lot of people, it's a release. I absorb, dude. Bridge to Terabithia ruined a whole summer when I was a kid. So I can't. That's so sad. It was the book that got me. I mean, the movie was sad, but like the book, it just hit harder. It's just because you have to. I always say that whether it be sad or anything, books are going to hit harder a lot of the time because you have to make it happen in your head. You know what I mean? Like you have to create it. You're seeing it. Yeah, you're doing it to yourself. Like it's more inside of you as opposed to what, I don't know. Either way, it ruined me.
Watch it. It's on Netflix.
Okay.
All right, Sean, third pick.
All right. So I feel like this is, I feel like I can't do my thing without saying this one, but I've picked it for other things before. But Pan's Labyrinth. When people try to tell me that Pan's Labyrinth isn't a horror
absolutely
movie,
horror,
absolutely a horror movie. But people tend to just say it's a fantasy or things like that. But
things can be multiple things,
right? Exactly. So I just need to, for anyone listening that would dare argue with me about that.
Yeah, we've said it before. 99% of the time, if Guillermo touches it, it's going to be a horror film. I mean,
in fact, it's so obvious. Do you want me to pick a different one?
Sure.
In my opinion. All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Just because I've picked that one for a million things.
Yep.
Instead, I'm just going to say Labyrinth.
That was on my list. Labyrinth is a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. Because think about it. The Goblin King, bunch of goblins, stealing baby, 80s pop star chasing you through an MC Escher painting. That's
There's nothing more horror.
Yeah, exactly. What do you want?
And Jennifer Connelly starred in a horror film directly after that, so you can tell that it affected her.
Yeah,
which, by the way, is my favorite Dario Argento film. But anyways, go ahead.
I just want the Jim Henson Company to do more dark projects.
Yes.
Who do I have to call? What you know what I mean? Henson. Like Jim, get Jim on the phone. Get Brian Henson on the phone. All right.
That's a good one. Labyrinth. Yeah. All right, Corey, what is your fourth choice?
This is like, these are 3 movies, but I think they are all virtually the same thing. The Hunger Games, Divergent, and Maze Runner. I think all those go hand in hand as like I think that almost all the dystopian teen movies were horror movies. Because when you look at all of these children that are slaughtering each other and slaughtering every government official, the Maze Runner, first of all, like that is a really scary concept, to be trapped in a maze that like the government made. Divergent, that I think is just about like being trapped again. And then the Hunger Games is like a couple gory shots away from being a slasher, basically.
Yeah.
Like, it's literally just a bunch of people murdering each other.
Yeah. The concept is very, it's so dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's totally
it's
fair.
really just a directorial choice to not make it as dark as it can be. That film could very easily be dark
because it was meant for like middle schoolers.
Yeah.
I think that's really the only reason.
And that's another one where I was disappointed because I read the books, the Hunger Games.
The books are terrifying.
So the end of book 1 with the dogs with the
God.
simplified. They did such an injustice to the power behind that part of the story in the movie. Not to crap on those movies or anything, but I was very disappointed when it got to that and they had dumbed it down so much.
For sure.
But yeah, very, very much so horror, especially when you touch on that. So
I agree.
Yeah, fair pick.
My fourth one. So like I said, I'm going to do 2 documentaries back to back. I should have chosen this one first. It's my favorite documentary because it hurts so much. The film Dear Zachary.
Yeah,
it is.
I thought that's what you were going to pick last time.
Yeah. Corey, I don't know if you've seen Dear Zachary. I know that you said crying's good for your skin. This boy will make you cry.
Great.
Yeah.
It's for anyone that hasn't seen it, it's a documentary from what is it? It's a documentary from a father's best friend to the father's son, like about his dad. So that's all that I'm gonna say.
Yeah. Don't look up anything else.
Yeah, don't look up anything else.
God.
I just gotta say it is a horror film. For anyone that's seen it, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen it, Corey, I need you to watch it so we can. So you
I'm
can
intrigued,
tweet,
but
so
I'm a little scared.
I'm really
like, how dare you?
Yeah. Really curious to see the tweets after that because
it's a really, I think it's the best documentary ever made. It's amazing.
Wow.
In like the worst way possible.
Praise.
But Dear Zachary is for sure my number 4. What about you, Sean?
Okay. My number 4. So I'm going to honorable mention Dark Crystal with Labyrinth just because of whatever, but my number 4 pick is going to be Never Ending Story.
Yeah.
Because again, it for me, that's where animatronics, when I was a kid, I couldn't watch it. I think I saw 3 all the way through like once when I was like 9 or 10. But before that they tried to have me watch 1 or 2 and I couldn't do it because the animatronics freaked me out so much. And that's why I have a deep love for animatronics now. Because, that childhood trauma is why I love it now. We bonded. But yeah, it's just dark. I mean, the Artex scene alone is so sad and devastating. It's a commentary on depression and I don't know. Never ending story.
It's a tough one. I was thinking about that too. It's very good. Very, very, very good. Cool. All right, Corey, before you wrap up, normally what we do is before we say our final pick, we'll throw in if you have any honorable mentions or things that you don't think people would pick, whatever's left on your board. If you wanted to do that and then say your final pick.
Okay. So my final pick is like a little out there. So my honorable mentions make more sense, I think. Into the Lambs, because everyone tells me that it's just a thriller, but there is a blood eagle in it. So I 100% think that's horror. Yep. It has a cannibal, whatever.
It's about
No Country for No Country for Old Men.
I knew you were gonna pick that one.
1000%. I don't think there's a villain that's scarier.
Nope.
E.T.
E.T.
traumatized me for the rest of my life. Like I've never been the same. Never been the same since E.T. To this day, I can't, like, I love it, but if I watch it, E.T. freaks me out so much.
Yeah.
The Wiz movie, not The Wizard of Oz, but The Wiz is so wild. And I remember watching it as a kid and like not even thinking about it being crazy. And then I rewatched it recently. I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
It's good.
The Oz films in general get dark.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah.
Return to Oz is just crazy. They do electroshock. Yeah,
that is a full horror movie.
Electroshock therapy on a little girl. All right.
Yeah. But I think my final pick is the live action Cat in the Hat.
I knew it. I knew someone was going to pick it.
I tweet this a lot. It is so scary.
Maybe that's why.
And
I saw you tweet it.
Even when I watched it as a kid, like I just can't deal with it. And I watched it again a couple months ago, and like the cat is insane. He is not like, I don't know why he was in a kid's movie, but like he goes out of his way to like threaten every single person in that movie with violence.
Yeah.
Everyone.
I'll kill you and I'll make it look like an accident. So good.
I think that movie is good, but it is camp in the way that all horror movies are.
Yeah.
It's such a,
That's totally fair.
That's a great way to explain that. Yeah, I totally agree.
Wow. I need to re-up on it.
And it's on
Netflix. It is.
Okay.
Time.
It's been a while. I'm either going to watch that or The Craft tonight. I haven't decided.
Listen, double feature. Blackfish, Cat in the Hat.
Yes.
Perfect.
Blackfish first?
I don't know. Probably.
Yeah, because then you'll be crying, and then Cat in the Hat, you'll just
kind of lighten it up.
I don't know if it'll lighten it up, but it'll just be a different feeling.
Well, yeah. That's fair.
True. All right. So I have 2 honorable mentions before I choose my final one. My final one's Goofy. The Day After Tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah.
In terms of our ecosystem, the world, it's so funny because with everything that's happening, my girlfriend and I were talking about it, and I was like, I want to watch it so badly. And we rewatched it and we're like, this is the world right now. I mean, that film came out in like 2005 or whatever, but it's scary what weather can do and climate change.
Even watching Greta Thunberg's new documentary, like that was terrifying to me. Yeah. Like anything that has to deal with climate change, I think.
Oh yeah, it's scary.
It's so scary.
I need to
totally agree.
Write that down.
Our episodes consist of Sean making lists of things he needs to watch, and then he goes and he finishes Dark because I told him to do that forever ago. So that's
nice.
But
I am so slow getting through stuff, but.
And then my other honorable mention is Mother. I don't know if you guys have seen Mother.
Yes.
Darren Aronofsky.
Mother is definitely a horror film.
It's a horror film. I mean, it's at its core, it's a religious allegory, but it is terrifying. It has Javier Bardem, who I just only can see as Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men, so he scares me automatically. But that movie is like an anxiety attack filmed. That's truly all that movie is. And it's ridiculous. But my 5th pick is going to be a film that I believe would be horror in real life, and that's Cheaper by the Dozen. Having one kid is scary enough. If you're telling me I got 12 fucking kids, dude, there's no way. It's terrifying. For anyone to be put in that position is just, I mean, I would rather be in Hostel than be in Cheaper by the Dozen as a dad. So that's gonna be. Listen, we needed some levity, so that's
what about that one about that guy that has 500 children? I think Vince Vaughn was in it or someone like that. But
oh yeah, oh god, it's about not like The Mailman or something, but he was like a sperm donor, and they found all of like
maybe I can't remember. I don't know. I never saw the movie. I saw the trailer.
That one's a true story.
It's
about
scary.
It's about this dude who was a sperm. I think that's a true story. It's about a guy who was a sperm donor. And basically, like all of his kids, he has so many kids, and they're all like, "Yo, pops, you're our actual dad." And like, yeah, that's crazy. But
wrap it up, fellas.
Scariest actual real life possibility. Yeah. Cheaper by the Dozen.
Terrifying. Jesus.
All right, we got one more, Sean. What are you choosing?
All right. My honorable mentions. So I'm not going to go through all of them. My first one is going to be Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Yes.
Yeah, because I don't remember what he's called, something Meister or something. That guy is spooky. Kidnapping. I was really afraid of getting kidnapped when I was a kid. Yeah.
Were you? Me too.
Dude.
It was my biggest fear.
Yes.
For no reason.
If a car drove by too slow. Well, yes. Yeah.
If a car... Even today, if a car drives by me too slow, I freak out.
It's weird.
It's so bad.
Yeah, it is. I truly had small whatever. I think I even talked about it on another thing. I'm not going to go into the full whatever of it, but we went to I remember specifically, and I was like 8 or 9, so it's not like I was 5. Went to an ice cream place, and there was this like family, and I saw that they were just kind of looking at me multiple times, and I was convinced that they wanted to take me, and it was all because of this. Dude, it was because of this. It's called the Earl King. There is this German like
you've told
poem
me this story.
That was turned into an opera, and my music, look up Earl King when you're done. It's the Elf King. Listen to the song, and it's just about these like ghost or like forest spirits like fairies, that kidnap this boy, and it will fuck you up. And my kindergarten music teacher decided to show it to us And it ruined my life. It literally ruined my life. But yeah, so anything with kids getting kidnapped when I was a kid fucked me up. It didn't even matter for what reason, but okay. But my second is Troll in Central Park. I don't know if either of you know what that is.
It sounds like horror though.
It's just got a lot of dark themes. I don't even know. I would have to go on a whole tangent to explain it. Look up a trailer. It's a really good movie. You should watch it. But my final pick. Okay, this one I know I'm going to have to explain. I think I explained it to Steve before. Corey, have you ever heard of Pet Shop? No, of course you haven't. Of course you haven't. No one knows that movie. All right, Pet Shop was a film made in '95. This is the basic premise of it. These two like cowboy aliens land in this pet shop in like a suburb town, and they basically fill the pet shop and start running it with these alien creatures that can make themselves look like normal ones. So these kids go and like one of them adopts a rabbit, and then they get it home and it seems like a normal rabbit, but then it turns into a Muppet-like character. and it is the craziest movie that I've ever seen. It just has incredible. You would watch the trailer.
That should be like the Little Shop of Horrors like prequel.
That's what
it sounds like. Kind of like that, but it freaks me out to this day way more than Little Shop. I think a big part of it too was my family has a cabin in the Upper Peninsula in a very small town. You have to watch the trailer. It is so fucking, it is freaky. Okay. That's exactly what it is. But my family has this cabin in the UP, and it's in a very small town. I'm talking, if you have a heart attack, they have to have a helicopter come and fly in because the closest hospital is like 2 hours away. But the town has 2 gas stations, 2 bars, a B&E, and an IGA, and that's it. And at the back of the IGA, they would rent VHS tapes. And my whole life, one of the 7 tapes that they had was Pet Shop. And just looking at the cover was unsettling. And one day I watched it, and yeah, it is a horror movie. I will hear nothing else about it. And
it sounds like one.
Yeah.
That concept alone. Definitely.
Everyone listening, go watch the trailer for Pet Shop. It's 95. You'll know. If you're wondering if it's what I'm talking about, then it's not it. You'll know. All right.
You'll know when you see it. That's
passionate.
That's good. This has been one of our best top 5s. It was a great conversation. Yeah. Corey, thank you again for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much.
We need to bring you back and do some more games because this has been a blast. And I was telling Sean, we'll have you on for other games, and then we'll look and see what you've tweeted about and bring up some topics to chat about. But again, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And like I said before, if you haven't seen Corey's stuff, go to gorycory.net. Again, there's no E in either of those words, gorycory.net, and read her blog, check out her work. And that's it. Thank you guys for listening to this episode. As always, like, follow, subscribe, and go rent Pet Shop on VHS.
Do it.
That sounds good.